Welcome back to the channel and another rebuild. This time we're taking on the hot seat at Newcastle United. The club has just been subject of a takeover and now is the hands of new owners who have promised plenty to the fans who have suffered a lot over the years. Newcastle have had quite a turbulent history and showed great promise in the early 90s and when they came close to winning the Premier League. Unfortunately, in the years to come, it would see them struggle on and off the pitch with plenty of discontent in the stands. That is until now. So, with the rebuild, we've set ourselves a 5-season window to see if we can bring the glory days to Newcastle and potentially bring the silverware that the fans and a club the size of Newcastle so desperately craves. So if you like the content, then drop a like on the video and hit that subscribe button as we jump straight in to this Newcastle United rebuild. So here we are on our first day in charge here at Newcastle United. Let's see what the board want from us in the next 5 years, what sort of transfer budget we've got, and more importantly, what sort of squad we're currently working with, and where the improvements are needed to try and gain those places up the league, potentially to win us some silverware, maybe even, dare we dream of it, a European title. So this is the guidelines that the board have set out with us for this season. So they want us to sign highly reputational players, grow the club's reputation, increase the commercial revenue, which will come from improving ourselves and getting into Europe, work within a wage budget, which should be straightforward, top half finish in the Premier League, which should be very achievable this season, reach the FA Cup quarter-finals, Carabao Cup quarter-finals minimum, and also qualify for the Euro Cup. They obviously then want us to work within the next 5 years of qualifying for the Champions League and win a domestic cup. So hopefully we can do all that. Now let's check out the finances and see what budget we've got to work with. So there you go. We've got a whopping £113 million sitting in the transfer kitty. As you can see, the overall bank balance currently is sitting at £225 million. This club has got money and money to burn. Hopefully, though, we can spend it wisely and build a team that's capable of winning the league and even European glory. Now, let's check out that squad. So as you can see, we already have certain players that have got high potential. I think Maximin's one, Jamal Lewis is another. Alright, Callum Wilson could do us a job. We've got Kieran Trippier as well. There's plenty of players in this squad already that have got the potential to help build a good squad for the future. Alright, there's a lot of positions as well that potentially we may need to look at bringing in reinforcements in. Especially probably the defence as a centre-back is going to be a very big important option for us this season. So we need to try and strengthen that area pretty much, as the centre-backs we've got are not really what we're looking for currently. Alright, there's certain other areas that we need to strengthen, especially probably up front as well. Alright, we've got Callum Wilson, but again, another striker might be a better option. But we're going to be building a decent team over these next 5 seasons to try and gain our objectives that we're going to try and do by winning the league and also maybe a European trophy, be it the Conference League, be it Europa League, or even dare we dream the Champions League. We will see. We'll see what we can do. So I'm now going to get busy signing the players. Join us at the beginning of the season so we can go through the tactic that we're going to be playing this season and potentially what our best 11 is going into our first season of this Newcastle United rebuild. So the transfer window has just slammed shut in our first season of the rebuild. It's a summer transfer window, so it's been fairly busy and we've spent all our cash that was available to us. Let's now run through the players that we've brought in to try and propel us forwards and potentially gain European football at the end of the season. The first signing of the summer is Diego Carlos. A commanding defender has joined us from Sevilla. We needed to strengthen the defence as the quality of defenders that we currently had at the club were not great, and he certainly fits the bill as a commanding centre-back who's going to play as a ball-playing defender at the back, and most of the play is going to come through from him and the goalkeeper. What we want to do and how we're going to build our play moving forward this season. He's certainly got the stats. 15 heading, 16 marking, 15 tackling, jumping reach of 14, and a strength of 18. So he's going to be a very brave, aggressive centre-back, which is what we need at the club. Next, we brought another centre-back, but also he can play right-back as well. And we brought in Nordi Mukiele. Again, another quality defender who's got great physical attributes as well as technically a good player on the ball as well, and very good positioning, work rate and bravery. We want brave, pacey, fit centre-backs or defenders that are going to throw their body on the line, that's going to do everything for this club to try and propel us forwards. The versatility of him as well, that he can cover at right back as well if needed, is also an added bonus as it covers 2 positions as well. Our next signing is where most of our transfer budget went for the summer, on Basuma from Brighton. He cost us a pretty penny and the fee potentially could rise, but I think we've got a quality midfielder here to help bolster this team. We needed someone that was powerful and not afraid to stick a tackle in midfield to show what this team is all about. And he will complement this team no ends. He's an absolute natural in this position. With a first touch of 16, passing of 16, tackling of 17, technique of 16, and position of 16, and also that high work rate and stamina, he is an absolute powerhouse. He is going to do absolute wonders for us in the midfield, and I'm expecting great things from him. Still only 25 and also has potential to still improve quite considerably. Welcome to the squad, Basuma. Next, we needed to bring in some players that were going to add a bit of depth to the squad. So we brought in Alex Iwobi. Alright, you may be thinking, why have you signed him? But we needed cover for positions. And they certainly needed cover for the likes of St. Maximin, who potentially, if he gets injured, we could be struggling in that sort of position. So he's an ideal fit, as he can play anywhere, realistically, across the attacking third of the field. What we need, and I don't see, is a no-brainer, as it only cost us 7.5 million. And he's certainly going to help us out through the season. Next up, we needed to strengthen in the striker department. And this one seemed a no-brainer, especially for the fee of £19 million. We've brought in Gabriel Barbosa. He has got the potential to be an absolute cork of a striker for Newcastle. Got great technique, great off the ball, great determination, and he's not a bad finisher at 15, and he's quite pacey as well with a 15 stat as well. So, in all, I think we've got a good striker who could potentially be rivaling Callum Wilson for that starting role this season. He again can play out wide if we want to utilise him in a different position as well. So I think this was good business from ourselves in signing Gabriel Barbosa. Our final signing of the window, Bernard Leno. We needed a replacement. We needed a replacement for Dubravka as he's out injured currently. And I know Darlow's not a bad keeper, but we do worry about the depth that if something happened to him as well, as we wouldn't have anyone there to potentially step into the fold. So Leno seemed an ideal replacement for that point. So we've brought him in on loan to cover Dubravka until he's back fully fit again. So we'll see how it goes on. We do have an option to buy Leno if we want to at the end of the season, but we'll see how he does for us this season. So that now concludes our transfer business of the comings in. There's not been many notable outs. We've got rid of a few players, the likes of Paul Drummett's gone to West Ham for 2.4 million. John Joe Shelby's gone to Rennes for 4.7. And Kieran Clark has gone to Granada for 1.7. They are the majority of the notables outs. There's not been many other than that. And we've only managed to recoup 9.75 million, spending over £100 million on the players that we've brought in. Obviously, there is a couple of other players that had already been agreed to come in before we took over, but we won't go through those. Let's just now see how we've been getting on in the league in our first 3 games being in charge at Newcastle United. So there you have it. We are currently sitting third on 7 points with 2 wins and 1 draw from our first 3 games of the season. It's been promising so far, and we've been looking pretty sharp in front of goal and also at the back as well. We've also made it through to the next round of the Carabao Cup, and we will be entertaining Portsmouth in that. Let's now check out the fixtures, the opening 3 games in the league. So as you can see, we started off the league campaign with a 1-1 draw away at Tottenham. We then followed that up with an emphatic 5-2 victory over Brighton, and then we scraped through into the next round of the Carabao Cup on penalties at home against Norwich. Alright, we did play a pretty much changed team. It's still a strong team, so we should have done better, but we got through in the end. And we finished that off with a 1-0 victory at home over Arsenal. So, before we jump ahead and get to the end of the season, let's run through the tactics that we're currently employing here at Newcastle for this first season of the rebuild. So as you see here, we are playing a 4-2-3-1 wide formation. It's my favoured formation, and I do think it gets you results. Currently, this is the strongest team that we were putting out with regards to the Newcastle team that we currently have. Alright, Barbosa's playing out wide, but we can change him and Wilson around. We also got Ryan Fraser on the bench, potentially bring in there as well. There is quite a lot of depth in this squad now, which is helping a lot massively, with the likes of Awobi, Woods, Lewis, Mukiele on the bench as well, who can come in and play at right back or centre back. So we are pretty covered, and we've got great options. It's quite a simple formation that we're using. It's a positive mentality. When we're in possession, we're playing a fairly wide attacking width. We're looking to play out from the defence, playing slightly shorter passing with a higher tempo. We're looking to mix the crosses up but hit them early and be very more expressive. In transition, we are playing a counter pressing game, and then when possession is won, we're looking to counter as quickly as possible, and we're distributing the ball to the centre backs, and we're rolling it out from the keeper. When we're out of possession, we're playing a much higher line of engagement to try and win the ball back quicker, and playing a very high defensive line, using an off-field trap, and we're playing a very standard defensive width. We're also looking to prevent short goal kick distributions and to win the ball back as quickly as possible. So there you go. That runs the tactics down that we currently hold here for this Newcastle rebuild. Now we're going to fast forward to the end of the season and see how we get on. Will we be challenging for a European competition next season? Who knows? I'm sure we're going to find out. Will we even manage to win silverware in our opening season? Again, we'll find out now. Wow, well, I didn't see that one coming. I knew or hoped that we'd finish in a Europa League position or potentially Conference League, but we've managed to finish 5th in the league. That is a massive surprise, especially as we seem to have only missed out on Champions League football by 6 points. Wow, I'm very impressed with that. Oh, and look at that as well. We've also won silverware in our first season, as we've managed to clinch the FA Cup as well. Let's have a look, see how this season has panned out. So let's see how we got on this season. For September, we had a nice victory over Chelsea in the league, 2-1 away. Then the rest of the month was very disappointing. Defeats to Leeds and Norwich in the Premier League. Wow, Norwich getting beat by them as well. And then disappointing 4-3 defeat at home as well to Portsmouth in the Carabao Cup. Okay, October fared slightly better with a 5-2 victory over Wolves, a 1-1 draw with Aston Villa, and back-to-back victories over Watford and Burnley. November, only 3 games in November, with victory over Leicester, and away 0-0 draw at Manchester City, and a home draw against Liverpool. December, quite a few defeats in December, but we started it off with a victory over Crystal Palace, and then back-to-back defeats to Brentford. Wow, another surprise home defeat, and an away defeat to Manchester United. A draw with Everton, and another away defeat, this time at West Ham, and a victory over Southampton, Another disappointing defeat again at home against Aston Villa. January started off with another defeat, this time at the hands of Wolves away, and then again 2 draws back to back. Looks like we scraped through the FA Cup here by getting a replay against Bristol City. We did 1-0, and a draw against Burnley in the league, and then again 2 more defeats in the league against Watford and Southampton. And then we seem to turn it round towards the latter part of the season. Started off with a victory over Everton in the FA Cup 4th round, 2-0. A victory over Brighton in the league, 3-1. Bit of a shock 4-2 defeat to the hands of Tottenham. Bounced back straight away with a home victory over West Ham. FA Cup run continues with a 4-0 victory over Blackburn. And then back to league action with a point against Everton and a home victory over Manchester United. Wow, 2-0. And then we thumped West Ham in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, 5-0. Wow, disappointing defeat then, followed by that against Liverpool in the league. But we followed that up with a 4-1 victory over Manchester City and then a 2-1 victory over Brentford. Yeah, it looked like we drew City in the FA Cup and managed to defeat them 2-1. Wow, that must have been some game. A 5-all draw against Leicester. Wow, that one looks like it was an interesting one. A 4-0 victory after that against Crystal Palace and a 1-0 home victory over Chelsea. We then were away at Arsenal and managed to defeat them 1-0 and another home victory this time against Norwich 3-0 respectively. Then it was the FA Cup final where we dispatched Manchester United 1-0. That looks like it's potentially a cagey game. And then we finished the season off with a 1-0 defeat at Leeds United. Let's check out the stats, see how the players have performed this season. So looking at it, Callum Wilson has been leading the way with 41 games played and 30 goals. That's a very good return. Barbosa's chipped in well as well from 40 games, 17 goals and 10 assists. The maximum with 9 and 16. Willock's played a few games as well, 6 goals in 16 appearances and 2 assists. Iwobi, 9 games starts, but with 5 goals and 5 assists. That's a good return. Zuma, 29 games played, 4 goals, 2 assists. And then we're just trickling down here. Ukiele's picked up 2 goals. Joe Linton's picked up 2. Fraser 1. These are the bit part players then for the rest of the season. Kieran Trippier with 9 assists and 1 goal. And then, yeah, there we go. Not a bad return there across the whole team. So there we go. A good, solid start to this rebuild. We've managed to finish 5th in the league and win the FA Cup. More than what I visioned and hoped for in this first season. Now, let's check out what the board have given us for Season 2. So, we've got a transfer budget of £133 million. Wow. Whew. We can certainly strengthen this squad with that sort of cash injection. And we have a wage budget of 2.3 million. We're quite close to it at the moment, so we might have to adjust that transfer budget just so we can start bringing a few players in. So, at that point now, we are going to leave it there, and I'm going to jump into the transfer market. Join us shortly as we start Season 2. So as you can see, starting off Season 2, we've certainly splashed the cash. We've had very little of that massive transfer budget left. Let's jump into the signings and see who we've managed to bring in. So the transfers that we've brought in this season are a mix. There's a few free transfers come in, and also there's a bit of experience as well as a lot of youth. Let's now run through the transfers that we've managed to bring in to the club this season to try and help propel us forwards as we start our European adventure. So we start off by introducing Dean Henderson to the club. Dean Henderson has been signed for Manchester United for £14 million. We needed cover for Leno, and potentially he may push him for a starting position going on throughout the season, as we have a lot of games to cover, so we needed that option there, potentially if one of them gets injured. Because of the fact that Dubravka's also left the club, this was a no-brainer, especially as he was such a cheap option that was available to us. He's going to push Leno for that starting spot, and I'm looking forward to the competition that they're going to have between them this season. We needed potential options in defence, and this guy gives us plenty of that. He's going to push potentially further up the field as an attacking fullback, but Rendon Lundy is the player we've brought in. He's got plenty of dribbling skills, plenty of passing ability, and great acceleration, so he's going to be a very attacking fullback for us this season, and I'm excited to see what he can bring to this team. So the next player to join us at St James's Park is Chancel Mbemba from FC Porto. He's come in on a free transfer. This one was a no-brainer. We didn't want to splash big cash on a centre-back, and this option was available to us. He's going to be a very good addition to the centre-back that we currently have, and help certainly over the season, as there's a lot of games to play, especially in Europe. He's going to have that European experience, so I'm looking for that extra bit of leadership from him on the pitch. The next free transfer that we've brought in is Boubacar Kamara. The exciting player has come in on a free transfer. Alright, he's still a bit young and still a little bit raw, but he's potentially going to help in that midfield position, especially to cover the likes of Basuma in that position as a ball-winning midfielder. He's going to be one of the ones we need to watch for the future, and hopefully we can develop him into a quality player. Next up, one for the future, Benjamin Sesko. He's ideal for the latter stages of this rebuild, as the pressing forward could be moulded into an absolute superstar in the future. He's going to take a lot of work, but hopefully by season 5, he's pushing the likes of our main strikers for a starting place in this team. We're going to watch his development with a lot of interest. You're starting to see a pattern here as we brought in another young, promising player for the future in the form of Karim Adeyemi. He's potentially going to replace Callum Wilson as our main striker. He's going to be in a demanding pressing forward that we're looking to get lots of goals from throughout his career here in this rebuild. He's already got fantastic stats, especially his physical ones, with acceleration of 18, agility of 16, and pace of 18. Alright, he potentially needs to improve a little bit more on his finishing as it's only 15, but I'm expecting plenty of goals from him over the course of this rebuild. So the final 2 transfers that we've brought in, we've splashed the cash a little bit. And this guy, Noni Madueke, cost us 32 million, potentially rising to 38. Again, a young, promising player that's going to be vital for this rebuild. We're not expecting quick fixes overnight, so this is definitely where we'll be looking in seasons 4 and 5 to potentially lift that Premier League trophy and potentially even European glory. And I'm hoping that this guy is going to be the one that's going to help us guide us that way. He's already got decent stats. Again, his physicals are fantastic, and his technical ability is not too bad either. His first touch of 16 and his dribbling of 18 is what really caught my eye, as well as his flair of also 16. So again, we're watching his development with a keen eye over the course of this rebuild. So our final and 8th signing of this window is Ryan Gravenberch. We warded off competition from the likes of Bayern Munich and Barcelona for his signature, and he chose us as we offered him a very lucrative deal. Come and join the Newcastle rebuild revolution. The attacking playmaker is a vital role in this formation that we're currently playing, and we definitely needed some cover there, as currently we've been playing Alex Iwobi there. So he is the ideal candidate for the future and that help get our goals of potential Premier League title and also that Champions League. That's what we crave so much. Again, his stats are absolutely fantastic again. Technical, he's a brilliant player. He's got great mental abilities. His physicals, alright, they're not that great, but they could still do a bit of improvement. I'm sure we will work on this over the next coming seasons. So obviously, with 8 players coming in, there's obviously been a few departures as well. Javi Manquillo has gone off to Lokomotiv Moscow for 2.7 million. Dubravka, which would agreed to depart the club, has gone out to Olympique Lyon for 7.5 million. Almiron has gone to Shakhtar for 9.25 million. Ryan Fraser also went off to Lyon for 8.25 million. And Jeff Hendrick went off to Hertha Berlin for 3.5 million. Also, we've also lost Carl Darlow as well. He's gone out to West Ham for 1.3 million. So there you go. We've managed to recoup £32.5 million back into the club this season. Now, how have we got on in that all-important start to the season? Let's find out. So, there we go. Here's the start to the league campaign. After 4 games, we're currently sitting 10th on 5 points. Not the greatest to start, but it was to be expected with so many players coming into the squad that it potentially is going to take them time to gel and get to know each other and form bonds and partnerships on the pitch to help improve this team. We've also had our Europa Cup draw, and we've been on against the likes of Besiktas and AS Monaco. Hopefully, though, we can get through this group and progress to the next round and potentially even to the final. That's what we were looking for. As always, with the FA Cup, we won't know our opponents until beginning of December, so we don't know that yet currently. We have drawn Millwall in the 3rd round of the Carabao Cup, and we have a new piece of silverware to add to the club, which we managed to beat Liverpool 1-0 in the Community Shield. Let's now take a look at the fixtures for the first 4 games of the season so far. So as you can see, we have a very good pre-season, but our league form to start off with has not been the best, and it's very patchy. We started off with a 1-1 draw against Hull, Adeyemi getting on the score sheet. We then had a 4-3 victory over Leeds United, again, Adeyemi on the score sheet, Madueke and St Maximin, and then managed a 2-2 draw away at Aston Villa. Then Liverpool got revenge for the Community Shield with a 2-0 victory over us at home, which was a disappointing result, as I thought potentially we would be showing that we're doing a lot better against the bigger 6 teams. Let's now look over the best 11 players that we can put out for our team for this season of the rebuild. So here it is. According to our assistant manager, this is the best 11 that we can put out, which would be Leno in goal, back 4 of Trippier, Diego Carlos, Mukiele and Renan Londi. A midfield duo of Basuma and Gravenbach playing as a deep line playmaker, which I thought he would have been playing more as an attacking midfielder, but there we go. And then in front of them, we've got St Maximin, Iwobi and Gabriel Barbosa. And up front is Adeyemi. So there's plenty of room on the bench for the likes of Madueke, Kamara, Wilson, Mbemba, Henderson. Potentially got other players that we can build in and mould into this team as well. But that's the best 11 that we can put out on paper. That's not always going to be the case, as obviously we're going to have to rest players and potentially change players due to injuries and stuff like that. Let's now sim forward to the end of Season 2 to see if we've managed to win any more trophies. More importantly, have we managed to secure a Champions League spot? So Season 2 has now finished, and at first glance, I can tell that we've had a very, very successful season. Let's now break it down. So, it looks like we've had a great Premier League season, managing to qualify for the Champions League by finishing 4th on 78 points. Next, we've also qualified for the Champions League anyway by winning the Europa League, by beating Monaco by looks of it on penalties in the final. FA Cup wise, we were knocked out in the semi-final against Liverpool, so there's no repeat of us claiming the trophy that we won last season. But also, we managed to win the Carabao Cup. Let's now see which of our main signings we signed in the summer has made a great impact on our team this time around, or is it one of our players that we had last season that's continued to go from strength to strength? Let's check out the stats. So by the looks of it, Karim Adeyemi has bagged a total of 33 goals this season from 47 appearances with 11 assists. Barbosa has also chipped in with 17 goals and 13 assists. And Callum Wilson might not have played many games this season, but he still bagged 16 goals for him. And St. Maximin has also bagged 15 goals and 11 assists. There's not been a lot of goals coming from anyone else, but they look like the main four have bagged plenty of goals this season. We also loaned out Benjamin Sesko this season as well to try and get a bit more experience, so hopefully he will come back stronger this next season as we try to claim European glory again, but this time in the Champions League. Let's now break down how the season panned out. So when we last left it, we just suffered defeat at the end of August against Liverpool, and then we sort of started to put a bit of form together by the looks of it. We managed to beat Millwall 3-0 in the Carabao Cup in September, and then a good away win against Chelsea. Our European Cup games didn't take too kindly to start off with, as we suffered a 4-2 defeat at the hands of Monaco, but thankfully we got that revenge back on them in the final. Then Premier League form was not great either, as we slipped to a 3-2 home defeat against Wolves. We then continued with another victory, this time in a Europa Cup, and bagged a victory over Arsenal away and a 0-0 draw against Besiktas to end the month of September. October started off brightly with a 3-0 win over Brighton and a 2-0 home victory in the Carabao Cup against Carlisle, and we followed that up with a 2-0 victory over Bournemouth. Next was a disappointing 0-0 draw with Everton, and then a 1-0 victory over Fulham. Then had a couple of defeats at the hands of Besiktas in the Europa Cup, and also Brentford at home. We then finished the month off with a victory in the Europa League and also a defeat at the hands of Manchester City in the Premier League. November obviously being a short month because it's World Cup year. We rounded that off with 3 victories against Monaco, Tottenham and Leicester. December, because of the World Cup, we only had 1 game in the league, and that was a disappointing 1-1 draw against Watford. It looks like the second half of the season has been a lot brighter, as I can see plenty of green on this. So, we've had victories in January against Southampton, West Ham, Coventry, again West Ham, Chelsea, Manchester United and Brighton, and we finished the month off with a 2-2 draw against Arsenal. We suffered 1 defeat in February, and that was the hands of Leeds United in the league, but the rest of the month was full of lovely green and victories in the FA Cup, Premier League, and the first round of the knockout stage of the Europa League. March was full of victories again, with victories over Lazio in the Europa League, and victories over Hull and West Ham in the league, and FA Cup victories over Nottingham Forest and also Manchester City. April was a very busy month by the looks of it. We started off brightly with a 3-2 victory over Watford. We then suffered defeat to Manchester United in the Europa quarter-final, and then victories over Tottenham, and we got revenge and managed to pull it back in the tie against Manchester United with a 2-0 victory. We then slipped to that FA Cup semi-final defeat by the hands of Liverpool 1-0, and then continued with a victory in Fulham in the league and a draw against Everton and Manchester City, and progressed again in the next stage of the Europa League semi-final with a 3-0 victory over Villarreal. May, which is obviously the closing month of the season, Villarreal 3-3 to get through to the final of the Europa League, and then we've had a decent victory over Southampton 5-1 in the league, followed that by a 1-0 victory over Aston Villa. We then looked like we slipped to a very heavy defeat away at Anfield with a 6-3 defeat, obviously potentially resting players for the final to come at the end of the month, but we obviously then followed that up with 2 draws against Wolves and Brentford in the league, and our league campaign finished with a 1-0 home victory over Chelsea. There we have it, that victory over ASA Monaco in Europa League final on penalties at the end of May. So let's now check out the budgets we've got for next season, see how much money the board is going to give us to try and strengthen this, especially as we're now going into the Champions League. So the board have given us a whopping £152 million to spend on players. I think, again, it's not going to be spent on one or two players. It's going to be spent on a collection of players, as we certainly need to strengthen the squad in certain places to try and cope with the amount of games that we're going to have this season, especially as the competition is going to be a lot higher in the Champions League than it was in the Europa League. That being said now, though, we'll now jump ahead to the start of Season 3. So we kickstart off Season 3, and as you can see, we've spent all the transfer budget. Let's now jump in and see who we've brought into the club and if there's been any departures. So, there's only been 4 additions to the squad for Season 3 of the rebuild. We start off with by bringing in a player that we've used in the previous rebuild, Diogo Costa. This versatile goalkeeper that's very good with lots of decent stats, and especially in the kicking department, one-on-ones and reflexes are absolutely brilliant attributes for this sort of team that we're looking to build. And especially as the fact that Dean Henderson realistically is not going to cut it as a number 1 for a club the size of Newcastle. He is definitely a backup keeper. But as you can see, we've also let Leno go, but we'll get into that shortly. We needed to look at strengthening the defence, and we were in the market for a centre-back, as our centre-backs needed strengthening definitely. And this guy, Luis Felipe, fits the bill definitely. His attributes are phenomenal for someone the age of 26, and it's only going to get better. So he's going to be our predominant centre-back this season, and he's going to have a lot of experience. He's got European experience with international level, and also played in the Champions League with Lazio, and also other European competitions. So he's going to help with that bravery and determination and just what we need and drive that we're going to have from a player of this quality. Again, another area of the pitch that needed strengthening, and we've brought in German left wing back Philipp Max. Again, his attributes are phenomenal and he's going to be really good. Alright, he's pushing on a bit at the age of 29, but we brought him in as Lundy last season had a lot of injuries and missed a fair few games, and at points we did struggle and had to use youth players in that position. So yeah, he's going to be here for the next couple of seasons, potentially to the end of the rebuild, so he's probably going to be our predominant left back for the remainder of this rebuild. Next, we've strengthened in the midfield again and brought in Brazilian Marcos Antonio. The versatile midfielder has got plenty of decent attributes and will be vying the place of Basuma and Gravenberch for a starting position. It gives us additional depth in that midfield, as we did struggle towards the end of last season with a lot of injuries, and this is going to help combat that. So that concludes the ins. Let's now look at the departures. First off, Jamal Lascelles has gone off to Udinese for £6 million as they reached the buyout clause in his loan contract when he was out there last season. Also, Bernard Leno has left us as well for £33 million, which is a decent bit of profit on him considering we only bought him for £18 million. So that's good business all round. The rest are a couple of loan players that have gone out on loan just to try and give them a bit more experience and just to keep them happy at the club as well. So now, let's see how the start of the season has shaped up. The season started fairly brightly so far, and we've recorded 2 wins in our opening 2 games of the Premier League season and currently sit second in the league. So all well so far in the league. Also, the European Champions League draw has been drawn, and we've got the likes of Shakhtar, Celtic and Real Sociedad in the group. So we've got a fairly decent group, and I would be hopeful we can progress from that. Thankfully, we've already managed to put silverware already into the club this season, as we've managed to win the European Super Cup by defeating Manchester City. As always, the FA Cup's not drawn yet, and we won't know that until December, but our defence of the Carabao Cup is underway, as we've been drawn away at Nottingham Forest in the 3rd round. Let's now check out the opening couple of fixtures in the Premier League, see who we played, who we've managed to defeat so far. So as you can see, we've had a very, very good pre-season as well, with wins galore all the way through. So we started off the Premier League season with a 3-2 victory over Tottenham away from home, and then we've had a comfortable 2-0 victory over Burnley. So there you have it. We've started off the season brightly. Will it continue? Will we win the title this season? Or will we be looking for European glory in an unlikely event of potentially winning the Champions League? What we'll do now is we'll sim it forward to the end of the season, come back in a second to see how we've got on. So the season's ended, and it looks like at first glance we've had a very good season again. Not as good as last season with as many trophies, but this time we look like we've progressed a little bit more in certain competitions. So let's run down what competitions, and how we've done in them. Let's start off with the league. So as you can see, we finished third, just behind Manchester United on 3 points and 10 points behind champions Liverpool. Good overall performance by the looks of it in the league this season, which by looking at the possessed positions, we've been there or thereabout most of the season. So it could have gone another way, but we'll go into the schedule later and check out where the potentially it's gone wrong this season. Champions League, looks like we've had a very good run in the Champions League, and we got knocked out in the semi-finals against Paris Saint-Germain. Obviously, we'd won the Super Cup prior to the season starting. FA Cup wise, we got knocked out in the quarterfinals by Wolverhampton Wanderers, which is a little bit of a shock, to be honest with you, because I thought we would have been there at the semis or at least the final anyway. But looks like we've run back-to-back Carabao Cups as we've been victorious in that trophy this season. Let's now run through the schedule and see how we've gone before we look at the player stats. So we start off with the month of September, and we've had some decent results in there with wins against Arsenal, Norwich and Brighton in the league, and a defeat at the end of the month to Chelsea. We also had a victory in the Champions League group stage and also a Carabao Cup victory over Nottingham Forest. In October, we've had victories over Schalke in the Champions League, a defeat to Fulham at home, that's a surprise, that one, and then a victory in the Premier League against Sheffield United, another victory, a 5-1 thumping of Celtic at Celtic Park in the Champions League, and a 0-0 draw with Bournemouth. So this is potentially seeing where we've dropped points that potentially could have helped us win the league. Then moving into November, we started off the month with a great victory over Villa in the Carabao Cup 4th round, winning 5-2. A 4-1 away defeat to Brentford. Wow, that's a bit of a shock, that one. Beat Celtic in the Champions League 2-1. Draw with West Ham in the league, and then a defeat to Liverpool at Anfield. And we finished the month of November off with a 4-2 victory over Schalke. We then had a very, very good December by looking like we were completely unbeaten in December, with victories in the league against Manchester United, Leicester, Everton, Wolves and Villa. Looks like we've been on a fairly decent run here as well by the looks of it. Going into November, we've only dropped 2 points in the league. Going into January, we've got a victory over Sheffield United, a draw with Fulham. They look like they're potentially our bogey team because we seem to be dropping points against Fulham. And then victories in the Carabao Cup semi-final and FA Cup 3rd round. And then revenge on Brentford, smashing them 6-3 at home. And then away victories at Bournemouth and 2 home victories to finish the month of January off against Villa, 6-1, and a very good victory over Manchester City at 3-0. And also, we were the players sent off there as well early on, and we still managed to win that one. So that's a very impressive result. Going into February, victory over Burnley, comfortable one. Then Man City got a bit of a revenge on us in the league by beating us 2-0. Victory over Sunderland. So we had a derby in the FA Cup 4th round, 1-0 victory over Sunderland, and a disappointing defeat to Leeds. Another one that we should have been winning. And then victories over Tottenham and Wolves, and a victory in the first round knockout stage, first leg against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. Going into the Carabao Cup, we beat Tottenham 4-0 in the final. That is a very commanding performance for the boys, that one. And then a 1-0 victory over Arsenal in the FA Cup 5th round. And then we had a draw against Everton and a victory over Leicester, 4-3. So another very good result against Leicester, we always seem to have good games against Leicester. And then again, victory over Atletico Madrid, 1-0. And then that's where we went out in the FA Cup quarter-final against Wolverhampton Wanderers. So moving into the last 2 months of the season, we're potentially getting a little bit tired. We beat Liverpool in the league and then drew with Benfica and dropped points against West Ham and Leeds and managed to bounce back against Norwich 4-1 in the league to finish the month of April off. And May, we were pretty much dismal in the Champions League semi-final against Paris Saint-Germain, getting beat 4-0 away from home and also going 2-1 down at home in that tie. But obviously we finished the season strongly with victories over Arsenal, Man United, Brighton and a point against Chelsea. So we've done pretty well this season. Let's now run through the stats of the players and see who's been the top scorer. I've got a feeling I know who it is. Well, that is surprising me. I thought it was going to be Adeyemi, but it looks like Barbosa is our top scorer this season with 32 goals. Adeyemi was behind him on 28 and Madueke is on 18 and Gravenberch on 11. Marco Antonio on 9 and Luis Felipe has scored 8 goals. Great signing. The Maximin a little bit disappointing there with 6, but he does top the assist charts with 19. Diego Carlos has chipped in with 5. Basuma's picked in with 5. Basuma's not played a lot of games. Must have picked up a couple of injuries. Iwobi, people scoffed when I thought about signing Iwobi, but no, he's done all right. 33 games played, 4 goals and 10 assists. Not bad return to someone who was very cheap and really fitted into the squad. We still kept him around for quite some time. So yeah, we've had an all right season overall. Let's now see what the finances the board have given us for season 4 of this rebuild. So as you can see, we've got plenty of money. Unlimited funds with this Newcastle rebuild. Realistically, we're on £137 million available and a wage budget of just over 4 million. We now need to go and potentially strengthen a couple of positions. Ideally, the fact that Callum Wilson has left the club, we need to look at bringing in another striker. I've got my eye on one. We did use him in the last rebuild, but you'll find out soon enough. And also potentially either a centre-back or even a right-back. Because, yeah, Trippier's getting on a bit at 30, so he's getting to his prime age now. So we potentially need to bring someone in slightly younger to see where we need to strengthen. There may be a few players departing. I don't know yet. But we will be looking to strengthen and see if we can push ourselves to potentially, dream of potentially doing the treble or even the quadruple. Who knows? Can we do it in the final 2 seasons? Ideally, I want to win the league within the final 2 seasons. So join us in a second as we start season 4 of this Newcastle rebuild. So as you can see, we've been busy and the budget for the season has gone. How many players have we signed? Well, we're going to get into that now. Let's look over the new signings that have come into the club. We needed a replacement for Kieran Trippier as he was getting on a little bit now, so we've splashed the cash, and I mean we splashed the cash. £80 million was spelt on Dodo from PSG. The Brazilian right back is an outstanding acquisition to the club. He's got bags of talent, and those attributes that he currently has, especially his physical ones, are outstanding. He's going to do us a decent job this season. Yes, you've guessed it. The signing we signed previously in another rebuild has joined us again, and that's Darwin Núñez. The prolific striker is going to add extra depth up front with Adeyemi to help us get through all these games this season. We needed to strengthen in this department, and already he's hit the ground running with 3 goals in 2 appearances so far in the league. Again, he's an outstanding acquisition to the club and did cost us 38 million, but thankfully it was money well spent. So as you can see, we've only signed 2 players this window. And notably, there's only one real absentee that's left the club, and that's Boubacar Kamara, who's gone out to Hoffenheim for 33 million. We've done a decent bit of business in this transfer window, accruing quite a bit of money back into the club. That being said though, I feel like now we've strengthened the squad adequately for the upcoming season. Let's check out now how the season started so far. So as you can see, we've had an outstanding start to the Premier League by winning our opening 3 games of the season. Next up, the Champions League group draw has been made, and to be honest with you, we've got a very difficult group with the likes of Borussia Dortmund, Milan and Molde in the group. It's going to be a tough ask if we can get out of this group, as Milan and Borussia Dortmund are both decent teams. FA Cup draw, as always, is not drawn until December, so we won't know who we've got in there. But we've also got a tricky tie as we try to make it a hat-trick of Carabao Cup wins as we travel to Leicester in the 3rd round. Let's now check out the opening couple of games of the Premier League season. So as you can see, pre-season was pretty decent, with only one minor blip on that, and that was an away defeat to Rangers as we went down 3-2. Starting off in the Premier League though, we've had a victory over Manchester United, a 4-1 victory away at Old Trafford. We then entertained Southampton at home and repeated the scoreline with another 4-1 victory. And then we travelled to the London Stadium and dispatched West Ham 4-2. So as you can see, there's plenty of goals in this team currently as we look to march on and try and achieve our goal of winning the Premier League. So let's now sim it forward to the end of the season to see if we've managed to achieve our goal of the league. Well, the season's drawn to a close, and I think we've built something special here in this 4th season of the rebuild. Not only have we won the league, we've won the Champions League, the FA Cup, and the Carabao Cup. We've done a quadruple. I'm in shock. This is an outstanding performance from this Newcastle team. We've managed to beat Liverpool in the league and win the league by 4 points. We beat Leeds of all teams, in the Champions League final, and managed to win 2 domestic trophies again. Let's now run through the season and see how we've got on. At quick glance, I think this has potentially been a season that won't be forgotten. We started off August with wins over Manchester United, Southampton and West Ham in the league. We carried on winning run in the league again against Norwich, Everton and Bournemouth. And we managed to draw 1-1 with Milan in the Champions League. In October, there was wins against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League, a comfortable 4-0 victory over Leicester, a 0-0 draw against Sheffield United in the Premier League. We beat Molde 4-0 in the Champions League, a 0-0 draw with Liverpool, and a 2-0 victory over Aston Villa in the Carabao Cup. Moving into November, we recorded our first loss of the season looking at that, but we managed a 6-0 victory over Fulham, a 4-0 victory over Molde in the Champions League, a 2-2 draw against Leeds, and a resounding 4-0 victory over Wolverhampton Wanderers. And we finished the month off with a 2-1 victory over Tottenham in the league. Before that, there was the 4-2 defeat at the hands of Borussia Dortmund. Moving on again to December, and full month of green, realistically with only dropping 2 points in the league, with victories over Chelsea. We smashed Manchester City 5-1, beat Milan 4-0, beat Hull 4-1, beat Leeds in the Carabao Cup quarterfinals 2-0, minor blip with a draw against Villa, a 1-0 victory over Arsenal, and a 3-1 home victory over Sheffield United. This is looking promising. Is this an unbeaten season here? We beat Leicester in the league, dropped points against Fulham in the league, Carabao Cup victory over Sheffield United, and an FA Cup victory over Stoke. Drew with Liverpool, victory over Crystal Palace, a 3-0 draw against Arsenal, and an emphatic 5-0 victory over Crystal Palace. Moving on into February, short month this one, a 1-0 draw against Southampton, a 4-1 victory over Tottenham, a 4-1 victory over Manchester United, drew 0-0 with Inter in the first stage, knockout stage of the Champions League first leg, and we drew with Villa 2-2. We then moved into the month of March with a Carabao Cup victory in extra time against Liverpool, a thumping of Hull City 6-0. We beat Inter Milan 2-0 to progress to the next stage of the Champions League. We drew 2-2 with Manchester City. We beat Everton in extra time and then thumped Carlisle in the next round of the FA Cup in the quarterfinals 8-0. We now move into April and we started the month off with a 1-0 victory over Chelsea in the league. We absolutely destroyed Juventus in the Champions League, 7-0 at home. Wow, what a result that must have been. We drew 1-1 with Leeds in the league, and then we slipped to defeat in the Champions League quarterfinal second leg, 1-0 at the hands of Juventus, but that tie was already done and dusted in the first leg. And then there was victories in the FA Cup semi-final against Leicester, 3-0, and back-to-back victories in the league, 3-2 and 4-2 against Wolves and Norwich. We then beat Real Madrid in the Champions League semi-final first leg, 2-0. And victories over West Ham in the league, 1-1 against Madrid in the return leg at the Bernabeu, and we drew with Bournemouth, and then victory over Tottenham, and finished the season off with a 1-1 draw in the league against Everton, which my calculations is correct. That is an unbeaten season in the league, and we've not lost a game in the league. We'll go into more details on that in a second. But then we FA Cup victory over Liverpool, 4-2, and we beat Leeds United on penalties in the Champions League final to cap off an incredible season and a quadruple. Let's now check out the player stats for the season. There we have it. The story of this season is Adeyemi with 36 goals and Darwin Núñez with 26. Darwin Núñez looks like he's been injured for quite a bit of the season as well, as he's only played 28 games. Barbosa scored 21, Gravenberch with 20, Madueke with 11, Iwobi with 10, been a great signing he has. St. Maximin with 9 and 19 assists, Iman Barbosa topping the charts with the assists. And then the defenders and midfielders have picked up a couple of goals themselves. Carlos with 7, Basuma with 7, Philip Max with 5, Mukiele with 5, Lodi with 3, Felipe with 2. So yeah, it's been a good season. Marcos Antonio's not played a lot of games, only played 11. So either he's been injured or he's been out of favour. But it's been an excellent season all round for this Newcastle team. Realistically now, we've achieved our goal of winning the title and the European Cup, but we have one season left. Can we complete a title double and potentially a European double again? We will find out. Let's now check out the budgets moving forwards for next season. Okay, so transfer budget for next season moving forward is a little bit lower than we expect normally. It's only 78.4 million, but there's a lot more room in the wage budget as they've increased the wage budget massively to £5.8 million per week. We've got certainly a lot of room to play around with. There's potentially going to be a few departures. I can see it coming. And we're going to strengthen in the certain areas just to try and make this team even more better. But considering we've been undefeated this season in the league and only lost 2 games, I think, all season, I think, to be honest with you, I don't think we can improve much more on what we've just achieved this season. So, there we go. Let's now jump ahead to the beginning of Season 5 of this Newcastle rebuild. So we're starting Season 5 of this rebuild off positively and made a couple of decent signings to help bolster the squad. As you can see, we've spent near enough all our transfer budget that we were given by the board for this season. So now let's jump into and see the signings that we've brought into the club and see if there's been any notable departures from the club in this final season of the rebuild. So as you can see, we splashed the cash on the 2 players that we've brought in. Now let's go into details of those 2 players. We start off with Arthur Threet. Promising defender that we've been tracking for some time was on the radar of Chelsea, so we had to move quickly and we snapped him up and signed a pre-contract deal with him to bring him in at the start of the season, and he's joined us for £48 million. He's going to give us ideal cover for those centre-back positions, as he's going to definitely push Diego Carlos for a starting spot due to the fact that Carlos is now pushing on 30 and he's going to start struggling for pace against those pacey strikers that we all know and love in the Premier League. Now, we're going to talk about our marquee signing. Yes, as you can see, we signed Martin Odegaard from Arsenal for £95 million. It was a superb acquisition, especially as we've been struggling to find someone that can nail down that advanced playmaker's position that we so crave at the club. We've tried Gravenberch there, we've tried Iwobi there. We needed someone with a little bit more skill, bit more anticipation, bit more flair, and this guy has it in abundance, and he's certainly going to help push us to potentially another Premier League title and maybe even another European Cup. So that's the ins. Let's now look at the outs. We did lose a couple of players, notably Iwobi and Trippier have both left the club on free transfers as their contract was due to expire. Also, Mbemba has left the club as well for £25.5 million. But as we brought Threet in, I didn't see it was a bad bit of business to do, and it also helped us fund the Odegaard deal in the end. Again, there's been sort of notable loanees as well, because Benjamin Sesko has gone out to Ajax on loan, and Jordan Parry, who's come up through the ranks, who's looking a potential wonderkid for the future, has gone out on Hull to get some more valuable experience. So, let's now run down and see how the start of this season has started to progress so far. So as you can see, out of the 3 games so far played in the league, we're on 7 points, and we've not lost a game yet. Can we do it again and make another invincible season? I don't know. I think it's a tough ask to do. Following on for that though, that Champions League draw is not the best draw in the world at all, as we've been really handed a tough group with the likes of Real Madrid, Lazio and RB Salzburg in that group. That's going to be a toughie to get out, especially as Real Madrid will be trying to get one back over us as we knocked them out of the competition last season. On a more positive note, we have won the European Super Cup again, which that makes it 2 times in a row now. As always, we don't enter the FA Cup until the 3rd round, so we won't know our opponents for that yet. But we have been drawn at home against Ipswich in the next stage of the Carabao Cup, as we try to make it 4 times in a row in Carabao Cup successes. Again, as you can see, we've also added another piece of silverware to the season already, as we won the English Community Shield. Let's now check out and see how the start of the season has progressed with the results we've had during pre-season and those opening couple of fixtures in the Premier League. So as you can see, pre-season has been pretty much alright. Ideally, we would have liked to have won the Club World Championship, but we got knocked out in the quarterfinals to a very heavy defeat at the hands of Chelsea. We've had a couple of injuries during pre-season as well, which has hampered in our progress. But thankfully, the players are starting to come back now, and we're starting to hit form again. As you can see, the signing of Martin Odegaard has already had a massive impact on the club, as he scored within a minute of his debut in the 3-1 victory over Liverpool in the Community Shield. Followed up by that, there was also the 2-0 victory over Valencia in the Super Cup, as we added another trophy to our cabinet, and then we started our league campaign off with a 0-0 home draw against Bournemouth. This was a disappointing result, and we should have done a lot better. But thankfully, we've backed that up with 2 wins, with a 2-0 win over Everton away, and then a comfortable 3-0 victory over Manchester United. The only downside to this victory over Manchester United was the fact that Noni Madueke has been injured for the next 3 to 4 months, so we're going to definitely miss him, as he's a very valuable player of the squad. But we do have the players there that can step up and fill the void while he's away. So there you have it. Now we're in our final season. What are we going to win this season? Or is it going to be a barren spell and we're not going to win anything for the remainder of this season of this rebuild? Who knows? We'll find out shortly as we sim ahead to the end of Season 5. So the final season in this rebuild for Newcastle United has come for an end. Let's now go over and see how the final season has finished. So as you can see, it wasn't a repeat of the heroics last season in the league, as we've managed to finish 4th. Also, we were knocked out in the Champions League semi-finals at the hands of Manchester United. On a more positive note though, we have also managed to win the FA Cup, but it wasn't 4 times in a row, as we finished runners-up in the Carabao Cup. Let's now break down how the season's been, see all those important results and where the season faded. So when we last left it at the end of August, we were on a good run of form. But then look at this. 2 defeats back to back. First off, a 2-0 defeat to West Ham in the Premier League, and then an embarrassing 3-1 defeat to the hands of Real Madrid in the Champions League. Thankfully, though, we managed to pull it back with back-to-back victories against Wolves and Norwich in the league, and also, sandwiched in between that, a 3-1 Carabao Cup third-round victory over Ipswich Town. October was not the best month at all. Look at that, quite a few reds in there. Started off with a 5-2 demolishing of FC RB Salzburg in the Champions League, and then back-to-back defeats in the league against Sheffield United 3-0 down and Manchester City 3-2. We then followed that up with a defeat against Lazio in the group stage of the Champions League, going down 2-1, and managed to only a draw against Brentford. We then managed to progress to the next round of the Carabao Cup with a 1-0 victory over Liverpool. November, though, looks like there was plenty of goals in this month. We started off with a 7-1 demolishing of Fulham at home. We then beat Lazio 5-1 at home. We slipped to our defeat in the Premier League against Arsenal, going down 2-0, but dispatched West Brom 5-1 in the league, and then beat RB Salzburg away 5-0 in the Champions League. And we rounded the month of November off with a 2-1 victory over Watford. We're getting now to the busy festive period. So December started off with a 3-2 victory over Chelsea, followed by a 3-0 victory over Leicester. We then suffered defeat at the hands of Real Madrid and went down 2-1, and then had a 0-0 draw with Liverpool and absolutely demolished Burnley in the Carabao Cup quarter-final, winning 7-1. There was then 2 back-to-back victories in the league against Tottenham 2-0 and Leeds United 2-1. Turn of the year has come, and we started off with a defeat at the hands of Manchester City, going down 3-2. We then had a 4-4 draw with Aston Villa. Carabao Cup semi-finals first leg, 2-1 victory over Nottingham Forest. Wow, that was a tricky one. Look at that. Accrington Stanley 2-2 away. Only just managed to scrape through that one. And then back to the goals again as we smashed Nottingham Forest in the return leg at the Carabao Cup semi-final, 6-1. More goals in the league as we ran out 4-1 victory winners over Sheffield United, smashed Accrington in the return leg 5-0, and then absolutely destroyed Brentford 9-0 in the league. And then there was another close game, outscored Tottenham 4-3, and then slipped to a league defeat at the hands of Leeds United, going down 3-0 at Ellen Road. February started off with a couple of victories, with a 3-1 victory over Manchester City in the FA Cup fourth round, and then back-to-back wins in the Premier League against Fulham and Everton. And then we slipped to a draw against Bournemouth, and then a 2-2 draw against Borussia Dortmund in the first round knockout stage of the Champions League. We then suffered a defeat to Manchester United in the Carabao Cup, so we couldn't make it 4 in a row, but beat Bristol City in the FA Cup fifth round to progress. We then had back-to-back victories over Aston Villa and Liverpool in the league, before we managed to scrape through against Borussia Dortmund on penalties in the Champions League. We then ended the month of March off with a 3-0 quarter-final victory over Brighton in the FA Cup. In April, we started the month off with back-to-back victories over Leicester and Watford in the league. We then slipped to a quarter-finals defeat 1-0 at hands of Liverpool, but thankfully managed to turn it around in the home leg, winning 3-0. We then played in the FA Cup semi-final, beating Tottenham 1-0. There was then disappointment in the air as we managed back-to-back defeats in the league, going down against Chelsea and West Brom 2-1 respectively. We then played the Champions League semi-final, beat Manchester United 2-1 to finish off the month of April. So in the final month of the season, and we beat West Ham 3-2 in the league, and then slipped to a 2-0 semi-final second leg defeat at the hands of Manchester United at Old Trafford. We then finished off the season in pretty fine form with victories over Norwich, a 6-0 demolishing of Arsenal in the league, an FA Cup victory over Everton 2-1, a 3-2 victory over Manchester United in the league, and we finished the season off with a 1-1 draw away at Wolves to end our season and our rebuild. Let's now check out the player stats and see who's been the top goal scorer this season. So as you can see, Darwin Núñez and Karim Adeyemi are sharing the goal scoring totals this season with 33 apiece. Alright, Adeyemi's played slightly more games than Darwin Núñez, but they can share the accolade between the two of them. Barbosa's chipped in with 26, Maximin is 23, and Madueke is 15, and Gravenberch with 8, and Odegaard, not great. I thought he was going to score more. He's played 50 games with 6 goals and 14 assists, but he's going to be topping the assist chart with Gabriel Barbosa and St. Maximin. Looks like our defenders have picked him with quite a few goals as well, with the likes of Dodo, Diego Carlos, Arthur Threet, and Rennie Lodi picking up goals as well along the way. So this is what we've managed to win in charge of Newcastle. Over the league, we've managed to finish 5th, 4th, 3rd, 1st and 4th. So realistically, we've only ever been out of the Champions League spot in that first season. But we managed to get European football that season and actually stay in the Champions League. And we've won plenty of trophies as well along the way. Most notably, the Carabao Cup, as we won it 3 times. So there we go. I would say that's a pretty successful rebuild of Newcastle United. The question is now, who do we move on to next? What club do we go to? Someone suggested Tottenham. Can we do better than what we did in the Arsenal rebuild? Maybe drop a comment down below in the comment section and I'll see what you think. But until next time, thanks for watching this rebuild and I hope you have a good day and an even better week.